Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Gustavo Tolosa, and I am your host for this new book club that we are starting today, reading The Cheese Trap by Dr. Neal Barnard. I see that a lot of you are logging in. Welcome. It's always wonderful to see everyone. Just a few reminders. Well, this is the third book club that I'm starting. In case you want to see the previous ones, one was the starch solution. One was the healthiest diet on the planet. Those are in my YouTube channel, and they are in a playlist. You just have to look under playlists. So it helps me a lot. If you go to the channel and you subscribe, it helps it grow. It helps me to continue doing free offerings like this. So thank you. And other reminders, feel free to ask questions. Feel free to write comments. Remember that this is a webinar where we're learning from each other, and we want to be kind and understand that not everybody is in the same place that we are in this journey of adopting a whole food plant-based diet. So let's be patient with those who are beginning the journey. I started it about 7 years ago. And if there are new people here, you have seen me probably for many years. I was the McDougall official webinar host and producer, and you've seen me with Chef AJ, and you've seen me with I've had the privilege of interviewing just about every doctor in the plant-based world. And so what I can offer you, I am not a medical doctor. I am a doctor, but I'm a doctor in music. I can offer you what I have learned. And even though I am not going to give you medical advice, I can refer you where you can find answers. And we will have some exciting guests in the next few weeks. We will have a physician, probably a nutritionist and a chef. So it's going to be very fun as we read this amazing book that I hope you have. It would make this book club more rewarding, I guess, you would get more out of it if you have the book and you read it ahead of time. But if you don't, then you're here to learn and hear what we are discussing. And let's see. Just a few reminders also. If you have a Facebook account and would like to visit my Facebook page, it's called Dr. Starch, all spelled out. And I have the YouTube channel under my name. I also have a website that is called plantemus.com, which I will type later, but it is plant, PLANTEMUS, plantemus.com, where you can find some of my episodes of The Pianist and the Chef, which those are very fun shows that I produce. They do have a small fee, but in it, I show you places, I show you people. Like last time, I showed you part of my family. I showed you how I traveled to get there. And then we cook together, and then I play the piano, or sometimes I invite a guest. I have Dr. Ponyman, who joins us to talk to us about whatever it is that we're cooking, about the health benefits. So it's a fun show, and you can find that on that website. And then I have the website as a professional musician, a concert pianist, which is gustavotolosa.com, if you'd like to visit it. All right, that's enough of announcements for today. And let's get started with our book. And I will be reading your comments and or questions, so feel free to do that. And I'm on page Roman numeral number 7. I'm in the foreword, because this is a very interesting foreword. And it is by quite a well-known actress, movie and theater, and her name is Mary Lou Henner. And you might want to look her up in the internet. You will recognize her for sure. And so in this foreword, she talks about how she was caught in the cheese trap, like many of us. Cheese, as we will see in this book, is a very, very addictive, substance. I don't even know if I want to call it food, because it's one of the most processed substances on the planet. So, but she was caught up in the cheese trap, and she talks about at one point she was 17 days going through constipation. And it wasn't because of milk, because she never had a full glass of milk. And it wasn't because of yogurt, it's not her thing. And it wasn't cottage cheese, because she says, yuck, it was all because of cheese. And she says that she craved it every day. So she says on page Roman numeral number 8, I can honestly say that the single most important step I took in my health journey was giving up dairy products, cheese in particular. And she remembers exactly the day that she gave it up, on August 15th, 1979. And then there is something that, this is so good. I would highlight it if I were you. I would underline it. And if you ever want to share something with another person that asks you why cheese is bad or why you're not eating cheese, you might want to just type this word by word. Maybe you want to type it in a Word document and have it there. Remember that, I don't like confrontations. I'm not the kind that is going to try to, argue and try to convince somebody. Only I'll talk to people that have an honest interest in changing their diet habits, and then if they have questions and things like that, sure. But if I notice that they're just trying to pick up a fight, forget it. But this would be good to have it handy in case you need to copy and paste in different places. So I am going to read it because it helps me every time I read it as well. And this is in the middle of page 7 of the foreword. And it says, the only thing dairy is supposed to do is turn a 50-pound calf into a 300-pound cow in 6 months. And this is, common knowledge. You can look it up. It's going to turn a being, an animal in this case, in just 6 months. Just 6 months. It's going to turn that calf that is only 50 pounds into 300 pounds. If those are your aspirations, she says, knock yourself out. A human being has 27 feet of intestines and 1 stomach. Very important to remember this. We only have 1 stomach and a long intestine of 27 feet, while a baby calf has, only 9 feet of intestines. Very short. All that rotting stuff that the dairy has, and all the chemicals and all the hormones and everything doesn't get stuck as easily as it does in the 27 feet of intestines that we have as humans. And there are 4 stomachs, not just 1. There are 4 in a calf. Why are we drinking cows or goat's milk and not orangutan milk, our closest mammal relative? I mean, it really makes sense. And you would never make cheese from the breast milk of your next door neighbor, but you are sucking from the udder of a cow you don't even know. And cheese is even worse, more concentrated and full of salt and bacteria. What was I thinking? She says. So everything changed when she gave up milk and when she gave up dairy in general, especially cheese. She says, my skin cleared, my cheeks depuffed, my nose narrowed, my eyes brightened, my body streamlined. Mucus was no longer coursing through my body, clogging my sinuses, pores, and digestive tract. And then he says, I stopped yo-yo dieting because I was no longer taxing my body by ingesting a food it wasn't designed to break down. And another very important thing that she just said there, our body was not designed to break down this food that we're putting in our stomachs. I dropped the extra weight in a healthy way, and I've kept it off since that fateful day in 1979. So I think that this is a very powerful forward. It keeps going a little more, but well, no, that's the idea that I wanted to extract from that. And so now we're going into a note to the reader. And so there are some important things here, actually two in particular. Number one, and this is not only for the book, this is for you whoever you are, wherever you are, watching this webinar about cheese. It says here, see your healthcare provider. This is not because changing your diet is dangerous. It's quite the opposite. And so it is a really good idea to see your healthcare provider, and because people who are taking medications for diabetes or high blood pressure, for example, they very often need to adjust their medications when they improve their diets. Sometimes they're able to discontinue their drugs altogether. Sometimes they're able to, do not do this on your own. That's what Dr. Barnard says. Don't cut down your diabetes medicine. Don't cut down your high blood pressure medicine on your own just because you see that it's improving. Work with your healthcare provider to reduce or discontinue your medicines if and when the time is right. Also, talk with your doctor before you jump into a new exercise routine. So this is a number one, which makes, maybe many of you have already been in a whole food plant-based diet. Many of you are not even eating cheese, I imagine. But if you're just starting this journey, it's a good idea to see your healthcare provider. Number two, get complete nutrition, it says. And so what does that mean? He says, you will want to ensure that you get complete nutrition. Please read the details in chapter 9, which we will get to it, obviously, later on as we continue every Saturday. Be sure to take a daily multivitamin or other reliable source of vitamin B12. And we know that Dr. McDougall and many other doctors, that's the only supplement that they recommend, the B12. And that you can take it as a pill, in a liquid, or as fortified cereals or fortified soy milk. Vitamin B12 is essential for healthy nerves and healthy blood. Okay, so after that, we go into the introduction that says hidden in plain sight. And at the bottom of that page, which is page 50, Roman numeral number 15, It says, if you're looking to revamp your eating habits to lose weight or improve your health, the place to start is not with sugar, carbs, or processed foods. The place to start is with cheese. And this is one of those things I was saying earlier. It depends where we're at. Okay, so I am at a point where I have given up, a lot of the bad things that I used to eat. So it's okay, and I've given up cheese. I don't crave it at all. But if you're just starting, don't think that you have to give up sugar, for example, first, or carbs or processed foods. You do need to give those up. Yes, sugar is not a health food for sure, but the place to start is with cheese. And of course, that's the whole topic of this webinar series. And he says, you love cheese, but I'm sorry to tell you, it does not love you back. And the sooner you recognize it, the sooner you'll conquer your weight or health problems. So cheese has some mild opiates. And because cheese comes from a cow, often a pregnant cow, just in case you didn't know that, it's often, you're getting a good dose of estrogens, okay, which are the female sex hormones. And cheese makers add enough salt to make cheese one of the highest sodium foods, because I promise you that if cheese did not have salt, you would not eat it. Cheese is actually salt is what makes cheese really crave it. We as human beings crave salt, sugar, and fat. That's the trilogy, the evil trilogy: salt, sugar, and fat. So that's what it says here. It is high in saturated fat and it is high in cholesterol. It's loaded, absolutely loaded with calories, high in sodium. It has more cholesterol than steak and sprinkled with hormones. If cheese were any worse, it would be Vaseline. All right, so then at the bottom of this same page 16, Roman numeral number 16, it says, you don't need to give up the taste of cheese. You just need healthier ways to get it. And so, yes, cheese is more fattening by far than bread. It's more fattening than potatoes or even pure sugar. Here's why. Most of the calories, about 70%, depending on the kind of cheese, about 70% of the calories in typical cheeses come from fat. And every last fat gram packs 9 calories. So compared to that to sugar, that is only 4 calories per gram. And remember that this total misconception that you hear people repeat as a brainwash because they've heard it already, who knows where, that sugar turns into fat. Well, fat turns into fat. That's why Dr. McDougall says the fat you eat is the fat you wear, because our bodies are fat gathering machines. I mean, we were made to, gather to conserve fat for when the famine times would come in prehistoric times. Now those famine times never come, so we always stay with that fat. But fat goes directly into our fat tissue. So turning sugar to fat, Dr. Barnard says that your body has to completely rearrange the sugar molecules. It takes a lot of work for our body, the body is wise. It doesn't like to waste its energy. It conserves energy, and it takes a lot of energy for this process of converting sugar to fat. Is not what the body does first. Thus, that process burns off another quarter of its calories or thereabouts. Yeah. That's not to say that sugar is health food, but the cheese fat has more than twice the calories found in the most concentrated sugar, and its calories are easily stored on your belly, around your thighs, under your chin, and everywhere else. You can see them and feel them, and they show up on the scale. As cheese is digested, it releases special chemicals called casomorphins. In the brain, these chemicals attach to the same opiate receptors that heroin or morphine attach to. Don't get me wrong. Casomorphins are nowhere near as mind-numbing as illegal narcotics. But like heroin and morphine, casomorphins are indeed opiates that affect the brain. So then he says coffee contains caffeine, a mild stimulant, while caffeine is not as powerful as, say, amphetamines. It is still strong enough to keep you hooked, as any coffee drinker will tell you. Casomorphins have subtle brain effects too, and evidence shows that they can keep you hooked too. So some foods are fattening, others are addictive. Cheese is both, is fattening and addictive, and that is the problem. So how many pounds average do you think an American consumes every year? It blows your mind. 33 pounds of cheese is the average, when in early 1900s it was just 4 pounds. So if your cholesterol is high, could it be because cheese is a huge source of cholesterol boosting saturated fat as well as cholesterol itself? Yes. If your blood pressure is up, could it be because cheese is also loaded with blood pressure raising sodium plus enough fat that it makes your heart push harder to pump your blood? If you have a diabetes, could it be that the bad fat, the saturated fat, that predominates in cheese is causing the insulin resistance that is the hallmark of this condition? So he says, well, there are some good news. I will show you how to slim down and dramatically improve your health by gaining control over this gooey yellow monster. Yes, there are ways to get the taste of cheese with none of the regrets. We will, as we do these webinars, we'll do some cooking demos, and we will see how we can make wonderful lasagna and pizza, a perfect sandwich topping, a mac and cheese, many things that taste like cheese but are made the healthy way. So Dr. Barnard, I just want to mention this on page 20, Roman numeral number 20. He just mentions that he went to medical school at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and now he's on the faculty there. In 1985, he founded the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine to bring a new emphasis on prevention and nutrition into medical practice and to improve how research is conducted. And so now we will go ahead and start with chapter 1. Chapter 1 is page 1, number 1, not Roman numeral number 1. So There's a funny story here. He's such a good writer. He talks about fugu, which is the world's second strangest food. It makes you think, what would be the first strangest food? Well, let's take a look here. It's crazy. Fugu is the Japanese word for the meat of the puffer fish. It's that small fish who, when they're threatened, boom, they turn himself into a spike-covered balloon. And puffer fish have more than spikes, actually. They also harbor deadly tetrodotoxin. One bite contains enough poison to paralyze your diaphragm and arrest your breathing. So guess what happens here? Japanese chefs have been willing to dedicate 3 or more years of their lives to learning the fine arts of separating the poisonous and the non-poisonous puffer fish parts in order to be legally allowed to serve it. Would you eat a puffer fish? Would you eat it knowing that maybe you will stop breathing and die? You really have to wonder how this started. And what courageous adventurers were willing to experiment. It's kind of like a Russian roulette with, trying to, I wonder if this is the part that will kill me. Let's see, let's take it out and I'm going to eat it. And then, okay, die. Oh, I took the wrong part. Let's try another chef. Well, let's take another one. And until you figure out which part you're not supposed to eat. So he says, well, the puffer fish has nothing on camembert cheese. Is easily the world's strangest food and the most improbable. Mother Nature never imagined anything like this. And this is the funny description here that I really enjoy reading. Dr. Barnard says, first of all, okay, just imagine this, picture it. One of our human forebears had to want to take milk from another species. At some point, some human thought, well, I'm just gonna, that idea had to pop in their mind. Who knows when? It apparently took 2.5 million years of human existence before that idea popped into somebody's, head. It took a long time, 2.5 million years for that idea to even pop into somebody's head. Then he or she had to figure out how to make an animal stand still long enough to extract her milk, because these were, animals that were wild animals. They have to figure out how to make it stand still. That too was a challenge when you consider the size of the animals involved and the fact that very few would be lactating at the appropriate time. And since animals produce milk only for a limited period of time after giving birth, our prehistoric food pioneer would have had to sort out how to keep milk flowing. I'm counting the steps. This is step 3. Now 4. Then this person had to mix the milk with bacteria to ferment the milk. You wonder how did this all pop into somebody's mind? Then another step, number 5. Then this person had to combine it with enzymes hidden in the lining of the 4th stomach of a calf. Oh my goodness, wow. And then finally, people had to like this gooey result, which was not a foregone conclusion, given that the smell of cheese is the smell of bacterial decomposition. In fact, the Brevibacteria used to produce Munster, Limburger, and several other common cheeses are the very germs responsible for the stench of unwashed human feet. Yes, believe it or not, the cheese smells like feet because the bacteria used is the same bacteria that comes from unwashed feet. What are the odds? It really makes fugu like the super easy food, even though it's difficult and deadly. Indeed, cheese was not exactly an overnight sensation. Okay, I see some comments here. Whatever we will not get into the religious part of this. We could say many, many years. Okay. Okay, so there was not a single cheese factory in the U.S. until 1851. Until 1851, there was not one single factory, cheese factory in the United States. And it was not until 1935 that the average American ate even 5 pounds of it per year. But eventually it found its way into our hearts and into our coronary arteries, and to be more precise, into our thighs and hips and almost every part of our body. So then on page 3, he explains to you how cheese is made. This is very interesting. I don't think we're going to go into this, but let's see here if I could. It's just, I think this is something that you can definitely read on your own. There's no point in me reading this whole page. So let's see here on page 5. In the United States, nearly all milk is pasteurized. That is, it is briefly heated to knock out disease-causing bacteria. Some cheese enthusiasts prefer unpasteurized raw milk cheeses, but these products cannot be sold in interstate commerce in the United States. So on page 5, at the very bottom of page 5, it says the next step is to add bacteria cultures. The bacteria will ferment the milk sugar, the lactose, to produce lactic acid, which contributes to the flavor of the cheese. What kind of bacteria? Well, for a mild product, cheesemakers use strains that produce lactic acid and not much else. For other varieties, they add cultures that produce various flavors and perhaps bubbles to make holes. And they might eventually add molds and yeast, adding scents and tastes of their own. Some bacteria are particularly stinky. Take the Brevibacteria, for example. This bacterial genus is ubiquitous. They're all over your skin and down your socks. If you haven't washed your feet in a while, it's those overgrowing Brevibacteria that make people open the windows. Then he talks about other kinds of bacteria. And on page 7, he talks about the calves' stomachs or genetic engineering. Okay, so our milk is standardized, pasteurized, and color adjusted, and bacteria have been busily fermenting it. Now it's time to coagulate it. That word doesn't sound very appetizing. Turning fluid milk into solid curd. To do this, cheesemakers add rennet, enzymes that break apart milk proteins and fats. Traditionally, rennet was taken from calves' stomachs, and Widmer's, which is one of the producers, still uses this source. The liquefied calf extract looks a bit like tea as it is poured into the mix. Bennett causes the curd to form, and the watery whey is then drained off. And that presents a new challenge, especially for a large-scale cheesemakers. What do you do with all that useless whey? Cheese factories put out tons of it, and it will take quite a landfill to handle that load of cheese factory waste. As it happens, the dairy industry found a market for whey packed in a tub. Whey protein is heavily promoted to bodybuilders who can be induced to pay top dollars in hopes that it will pump up their muscles. Then what happens next? Well, the forming and salting comes. So time to pour the curds into a form or some kind of a container, I guess, a round one to produce a wheel or a rectangular one to produce a block. These forms have also produced names for cheese. For example, the Italian word is formaggio, and it comes from form, or in French, fromage. So to make brick cheese, a Wisconsin original invented in 1877, Widmer's cheese makers pile on actual bricks, squeezing out the last bits of water and whey protein. And yes, they used the same bricks that Granddad used. So these cheese blocks then go into the curing room, where warm, humid conditions encourage bacterial growth. Over the next week, the surface will be washed daily with bacteria. Then the bricks are wrapped in parchment and foil for sale. Okay. Then there is a very interesting story about human cheese on page 8 and 9. If you want to read it, it's quite disgusting, which to say, but it's there if you want to read it. Page 9, page 10. It keeps talking about more disgusting stuff, like rags soaked with dye were hung over pans of urine. The urine's ammonia heightened the color of the dye, which was then rubbed onto the cheese. Today, the cheese's color comes from a red wax coating, but that was not the case a few years ago. Then on page 12, you have the leaping maggots. Oh, that sounds interesting. A certain species of fly, the Biophila casei, is especially fond of decomposing protein, like corpses and cheese. In Sardinia and Corsica, cheesemakers encourage the flies to lay their eggs on a sheep's milk cheese called pecorino. As the maggots hatch, they digest the cheese, producing a liquefied mass called kasumarsu, which means rotten cheese. Diners spread it, maggots and all, on flatbread, then hold their hands over the sandwich to avoid being struck by the leaping larvae. They wash it down with red wine. That sounds delicious. Okay, so page 13 talks about processed cheese. If you want to read more about the great old American processed cheese is there. It talks about how Velveeta is made, and today the Velveeta is made with milk, whey protein, milk fat, food starch and other ingredients, along with annatto and apocarotinol for color, however you pronounce that. And so on page 14, it says, now the problem starts. So let's just briefly mention them. Number one, what is one of the problems with cheese? Concentrated calories. This is so crucial, people, to understand that 1 cup of milk has 149, let's just say 150, okay? 1 cup of milk has 150 calories. But 1 cup of melted cheddar has 986. Look at that. You're going from 150 to 986. Second, besides concentrating calories, it concentrates proteins, particularly casein. I don't know if you have seen some of the videos that that discuss how casein is a source of cancer. You might want to look it up on the internet. But it's a source of concentrated proteins. It triggers respiratory symptoms, migraines, arthritis, skin conditions, and other problems. Third, it concentrates cholesterol. The key word here is concentrates. It concentrates calories, it concentrates proteins, it concentrates cholesterol and saturated fat, the bad fat that raises cholesterol levels and increases the risk of heart disease and Alzheimer's disease. As if all that were not enough, there is enough salt in cheese to contribute to high blood pressure. Along with it, cheese contains a variety of chemicals from hormones to opiates that makes it a product like no other. Cheese is a heavily processed food. So sometimes people get horrified when they look or talk about spaghetti or bread because they're processed foods. That is, they're made from grains, and those grains are, he says, gasp, they're ground up. That's the processing that it has. Think for a minute about cheese. Cheese is the ultimate processed glob. Cheese started like grass. You know, if you could go back, if you could see this film going back, you have cheese here. Cheese started as grass. I'm looking outside there in my yard. There's grass. That's how cheese starts, like grass. The protein, calcium, and other nutrients in those blades of grass went down the hatch of a cow. So the cow ate that grass. Passing through the cow's stomachs, because there are 4 stomachs, and digestive tract, those nutrients were transformed by stomach acid and various enzymes and eventually found their way into the cow's body and eventually into the milk. The milk was then pasteurized, fermented by bacteria, coagulated with enzymes, separated into solids, salted, and aged, during which time it was further metabolized by bacteria or other germs. Later, it might be added to a pizza or casserole only to be baked and salted again. It's hard to find a more heavily processed product. Honestly, I thought that oil was, and I think is now number 2 in my list. But cheese is definitely the number 1 processed thing. I don't know. I don't want to call it food. So we're now at the end of chapter 1, and this is very important here. In 1909, the average American ate 4 pounds of cheese per year because cheese was a European food. But things changed. In the 1960s, fast food chains cropped up like weeds, and they slapped that cheese and burgers and many other foods. And then the tsunami of the tsunamis came, and that's called pizza. Pizza in restaurants, pizza in schools, pizza in grocery freezers brought tons of cheese to American plates. Unlike the traditional Italian pizza, and I can abide to that because I've been to Italy, and Italian pizza uses cheese on top in many cases as a condiment, and in some pizzas that they make, they don't even have cheese. But American pizzas are essentially delivery vehicle for ever deeper layers of gooey cheese. By 2013, the average American's annual cheese intake had climbed from less than 4 pounds in 1909 to 33 pounds. That's roughly 30 pounds of extra cheese this year, next year, and the year after that. And there is a little thing here, a graph that shows you how much it's increased the intake of cheese. And now the bomb of all bombs here. Woo! This what Dr. Barnard shows you here. If this doesn't want to make you stop eating cheese, I don't know what will, because actually the 30 pounds of cheese that the average American has added to his or her annual diet now holds 55,000 calories. Can you imagine this number? Every year someone, not the food, not with all the other foods they eat, just with one thing, just with cheese, they're ingesting 55,000 calories. I don't even want to know what that looks like. I mean, you could drink a can of Coke every day and not get 55,000 calories in a year. That's 55,000 extra calories this year. And the next year, another 55,000 calories or more, because some people eat more than 33 pounds of cheese per year. And the next year, 55,000 calories too. And the next year, 55,000 calories too. So who is making all this cheese? Who is making all this cheese? Well, guess who? America, the United States. The world's leading cheese producer. Okay, now Germany is a distant second. It's not even close to the US, but it's second. And guess who's third? Now, you probably thought that France was first. No, France is third. And Germany and France export a huge number of cheese, a huge quantity of cheese. On the other hand, American produced cheese is eaten entirely in America. He says we eat it all ourselves. So it's just amazing when you see all that there is in cheese. And this is just for the first chapter. We'll keep reading, but forget it all. Forget all the disgusting stuff that there is in cheese. Just thinking about calories alone. Can you imagine the amount of food that you can eat in a year for 55,000 calories? Wow. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I can see that. Colleen, you wrote here because I said, can you imagine what it looks like? Yes, it looks like a tire around your belly. Yes, and you see that. You see tires walking in the streets. So, without trying to make fun, but because that's not the point. The point is that just giving up this one thing, it could make a difference in your life, in your friends' lives, in your family's life, and there are ways to give it up. I think that one of the most important things about this book is that because people get scared. They're addictive. It's like taking away, heroin to a heroin, addictive person, or a cigarette to someone that smokes 3 packs a day. I mean, it's scary to think that they cannot have this anymore. Well, they can have the taste. They can have the taste of the cheese and even the texture. And that's what we're going to learn from this book as we go along. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments. I see that it's so fun listening to you reading this stuff. A lot of times I read it in my mind, and so I don't say these words, but then when I have to pronounce some of these words, it's just crazy. I hope that you understand that, first of all, English is not my first language. It almost is. I spent most of my life in the United States, more years in the US than in my home country, Argentina. But some of these words, I promise you that some of you American-born people cannot pronounce. So I'm just going to say that that's my excuse for not pronouncing them correctly. So we're going to have, I'm going to have a surprise for you for next week. And I'm going to announce it when the replay goes out in the email. And it will also be in the description of the video when this video is in YouTube. So that's a surprise. Another surprise is going to be a guest that will come next week. And finally, for today, I will play the piano for you. Many of you know that is my first profession. Since age 8, I've been playing the piano. And so I am a classical concert pianist, and I am getting ready to give concerts online because many venues are closed. And I'm making professional recordings and videos. So today I want to leave you with something that is beautiful and is calming. And I think that during these times that we're living in, this is the year 2020, in case this video is watched, who knows, many years from now. And it is October 3rd of 2020, and the world is in commotion for this pandemic, and many people are stressed and sad and depressed and angry, and a whole list of negative sounding words. But most of this world is perfect and it's beautiful when we look outside and when we look at the sky. And when we listen to beautiful music, like the timeless music that Beethoven wrote. So today, I will play for you the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata. You can close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just let the music sink in and relax and think about positive things, think about beautiful things, because that's another powerful way of healing your body, your mind, your soul. I will see you next week, and I will move this camera. Give me a minute to go ahead and play this music by Beethoven.